Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here for thedailysheeple.com, and this is your news shot. Talk about infuriating news coming out of the news cycle. TheWeek.com asking the question, is America having second thoughts about free speech? No, America's not having second thoughts about free speech, but the social engineers are cramming it down our throat like this is what we want, but really nobody wants it. It's unfreaking believable. It says here, the free speech wars are getting worse, but it seems that none of the warring factions quite grasp the character of the dispute or precisely what's at stake. At the figurative center of the clash is the norm of near absolute freedom of speech and expression, which its defenders like to treat as the American default. A number of ideological challenges have risen in recent years to overturn this norm. On many college campuses, groups of left-leaning students insist that free speech should be conditional. Isn't that interesting? Let me stop there for a second. How can free speech have conditions? That's a whole, either it's free or it's not. You know, if it's conditional, then it's not free. How can you have conditional free speech? It makes no sense. And it says here that the conditions are that speakers adhere to explicit standards of diversity and avoiding the infliction of emotional harm on the members of the marginalized groups and the spreading of hate. From the opposite ideological direction, President Trump, Americans believe that government should take a strong look at libel laws to keep news organizations from subjecting his own administration to negative coverage. How about we do this? How about these media organizations actually follow through with what their code of ethics say? How about they actually do what they say they're going to do? You know? How about you practice the rules that you're taught day one in journalism school? Rule number 1, always follow the truth because the truth is a story. Rule number 2, don't get involved in any sort of organization that would prevent you from following rule number 1. Don't be biased. If it's going to insert a bias, remove yourself from the conversation. It's quite simple. The Council on Foreign Relations is probably the most powerful organization in the entire planet. Dr. Richard Haas basically runs the world. You want to know who the control freak is at the top? He's one of them. Okay. There are an absurdly high number of media personalities that belong to the CFR. The CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, is who basically consults every country. Every single freaking country in this world gets consultations by the Council on Foreign Relations with regards to foreign policy and other things. You have an unbelievable number of mainstream media personalities who are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. It's like a badge of honor to them. Now, I'm Dr. Haas, right? And I want to get some things done and push through perhaps Congress or, I want to see legislation introduced for certain things. And so what am I going to do? I am going to use the mainstream media people within my organization to help push my agenda. Now, if that's not straight up conflict of interest, I don't know what is, but we allow it to happen. And then we wonder why all we're given is garbage and fake news and propaganda talking points from these media organizations that for decades people blindly trusted, but no longer trust. It says, finally, from the center left comes calls to use anti-discrimination laws to punish organizations that oppose the legitimacy of same-sex marriages and accommodations for transgender people. Let me stop there. It is absolutely wrong of anybody to oppose anybody else's free will. As long as it doesn't infringe upon your rights, you should not impose your will on other people. You know, I just sent out a personal message to Jeff Sessions because that's what he's doing with his draconian drug policy. It's not even, it's unbelievable. I know what's best for you, so I'm going to impose my will on you. That's what I'm going to do. That's what that guy does. He's a frickin' schoolyard bully. And anybody else that engages in those bully tactics, you're just as bad as he is. Fact is, if you're somebody that wants to engage in same-sex marriage, I may think it's wrong. I may think it's not natural. I may not agree with it, but I'm certainly not going to tell you not to do it. That's your decision. That's not my decision. That's your life. That's not my life. If you ask my opinion, I'll tell you, but I'm certainly not going to impose legislation to prevent you from living a life of happiness. Something that, by the way, was important enough to put in the Declaration of Independence. So why would we go back on that? It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, this is unbelievable. Listen to this. It says, for much of the left, the president, so far merely rhetorical, attacks on the freedom of press is a sign of incipient fascism, and the complaints of the religious right are at once signs of paranoia and a form of special pleading for bigots. And for the right, the agitation for free speech restrictions on campus is evidence of a burgeoning anti-intellectualism in a place that should be open to all ideas and arguments, while the possibility of conservative religious believers facing punishment for their faith is both profoundly illiberal and a threat to free government in the United States. Now, as goes on to say the author, and this is Damon Linker, he goes on to say, as a free speech absolutist myself, thank you, sir, I find plenty to be concerned about in these trends, but it's important to recognize that such disputes are not new and that there need not signal the precipitous decline of liberal democracy in the United States. On the contrary, our clashes over free speech grow out of tensions with the liberal tradition itself, which in the past has been quite compatible with substantial restrictions on the freedom of speech. That's why such restrictions, such as anathema, to so many today, is for the past several decades. One side is in a century-long dispute has been ascendant. That's the libertarian position, perhaps best represented by the 19th century political philosopher John Stuart Mill. This tradition of thinking, which first came to political and cultural prominence in the U.S. during the middle decades of the 20th century, holds that when it comes to freedom of speech, almost anything goes. People should be allowed to think, write, or say pretty much anything they want, with the government setting only the most minimal of limits. No, stop. The government shouldn't set limits at all. There is no limits. Now, what I will say is that if somebody is injured as a result of speech, whether it be, somebody saying, calling you a racial slur, if you will, that's not causing damage. That may hurt your feelings, but that's not causing damage. And the government shouldn't even be involved in that. What we should be doing is teaching, going at this through education, not indoctrination, education. That means that parents need to step up and start teaching their children, look, skin color, my friends, have nothing to do with somebody's character, with who they are. It's just a color of skin passed down from generation to generation. That's all it is. Doesn't define a person. Yet in this country, we can't get through it, can't get over it. We're just stuck with these unbelievable societal definitions and these social engineers that do nothing but push, divide, and conquer in this country. And let me tell you something, folks. That is exactly what it's designed to do. These laws are not designed to fix the problem. They're designed to amplify the problem. Hence the reason why things get worse. They don't get better as more of these limits are imposed. And it's going to continue to get worse if we continue to allow our kids, who we send off to college, to behave like little brats I don't want to hear that. I need a safe space. If that was my kid, I'll tell you what, that wouldn't happen again. My child would be embarrassed when he goes on national TV to apologize for acting like an infant. And that's what more parents need to do. Let's teach our children to be adults. Let's teach them what maturity really means. You want to know why your kids can't? Yeah, they're staying at home till they're 35 and 40 years old. It's not about the economy. It's not about the job situation out there and everything else. It's because we're not teaching our children to man and woman up. And that doesn't mean that they have to be little 13-year-old adults. But what you need to do is establish a firm and a solid foundation of values and virtues that they carry with them for the rest of their lives. And if you set that at an early age, then you're in there. You've got it. I did that. My wife and I did that with our oldest son. Our oldest son is years and years beyond his peers and his coworkers. Because at an early age, not too early, but when he was ready, we started a path for him that was centered around discipline. Like, for example, one thing that I think was pivotal in his development was getting him into martial arts and having him work hard to become a black belt, and something that he achieved. You know, and now that he's a ninja, he knows exactly, hey, I have these abilities, but I also have the maturity and I have the control to use them when I need to use them and not use them when I don't need to use them. A la, don't show your hand. Card players know that all too well. Don't tip your hand. And he has a discipline to do that. He doesn't need to say, I'm a third-degree black belt. He doesn't need all that. Don't need to stroke the ego. Why? Because he's sure of himself. These are values and virtues you have to start when they're ready. Some people are ready at 13 years old. Some people are ready at 6 years old. It's whenever they're ready. But you have to be plugged in to see it. Look at this. That maturity level. He's coming around now. Let's nip this in the butt so that there aren't any problems down the road. Doesn't matter if it's male or female. You can do this. You can do it. Millennials don't have to act like your textbook definition millennials. As a matter of fact, I will say for the record that I don't think they do. I think that has been amplified and made to appear worse by media just to sensationalize and sell a story. I would say that if given the opportunity and given the right direction, that millennials would be just fine. Most are. Granted, are they faced with a tougher uphill road? Absolutely. Unbelievable hurdles that await them. But they can still get through it. If you teach your child how to hustle, man, there's nothing that can get in their way. But you have to do it. And if we do that, then these questions about, should we have free speech? They evaporate. They evaporate. Because you live in a society now where people respect one another. And where that maturity level is at a point that you don't have to go down this road. And those that would act like that, well, they're put in their place. And that's what needs to happen. We don't need to pander to wieners and weenies. What we need to do is pander to those that are strong. We need to make them the shining examples. And those that are strong, that have good, solid foundations, you need to lead the way. Show people. Be that person that stands up, that doesn't go with the crowd, that doesn't follow the lemmings off the bridge. Make change, or as my friend Popeye affectionately says all the time, be the change you want to see in the world. I'm Joe Joseph. This was thedailysheeple.com's News Shot. Feel free to comment below and visit our website at thedailysheeple.com. Hashtag Wake the Flock Up. Have a great day, everybody.